Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." During this Lenten season, perhaps you've noticed the little white bowl here on my worship backdrop on camera. That little white bowl has been with me over this last year since the first Sunday we weren't together in person for worship. I've had it full of water on camera while I would get ready for worship, at home while that has been the only place we've been able to go, and here in my office as a reminder of the living waters that quench the thirst that we have. Throughout this extended Lent that began a year ago and continues today, there have been many things I have found myself thirsty for. Thirsty for our old normal. Thirsty for a time where you could go out and gather with friends without worry. Thirsty for a time where you could travel and go places and see things and feel alive. But in reality, that thirst, it can't be met only by those worldly things that we go out and seek to do or to have. But those waters remind me that our thirst can only be fully quenched, can be fully met through God's love. It's a reminder of those baptismal waters that we are joined with Christ in all things and at all times. And regardless of what we may be lacking or what we may be wanting, to return to God and to have our thirsts filled by that presence of God over and over again. Whenever I walk by that white bowl, or now the baptismal font, or perhaps our art bowls, I dip my hand in there and just get it wet just a little bit, and that reminds me of those living waters again. Today I invite you to find your own bowl, perhaps to put out around your house, maybe at a place that you go to spend some quiet time, or maybe a place where you just need to be reminded to be calm and to be quiet and to rest a while. In the kids' activity bags we sent out in Lent, we gave them each a bowl for them to be able to do that as well, to fill it with water. And that it doesn't just have to be a symbol, that it can actually be something useful to draw us into disciplines that help ground us in those living waters week after week. A year ago, the very last place that I traveled to was to a conference, First Call Theological Education Conference, with other pastors serving their first call. And one morning, one of our fellow pastors offered a little sunrise activity called Prayer with Watercolor. And all he did was invite us into the space early in the morning as the sun was coming up, and he had watercolors on the tables and bowls of water. And he said, "I don't want you to draw anything in particular, but I want you to get your paper wet, to be reminded of your baptism, and simply start doing things on the paper that feel right to you, something that gives expression to where you're at. Pick a color, a squiggle, whatever it may be, and allow that to be your prayer to God today." So I invite you into that practice. If you happen to have watercolors at home, maybe get them out with a bowl of water and some paper. If you don't, maybe perhaps purchase some. You can get them online and have them delivered to you at home, or at most grocery stores and the kids' school supply aisle, they have little watercolor sets that are fairly inexpensive. For me, here at the church, I found myself at different times over the pandemic going down to our art room in the basement, where we had lots of leftover watercolors. And every once in a while, I would do this activity just to calm my mind whenever I would be incredibly anxious or worried about what was happening. So all you need to do is take a paintbrush, dip it in the water, and put some water on your paper. Now, if you're like me and grew up first putting water on the colors, it was a little bit of a challenge to be able to think about putting water on the paper first. But that's what he invited us to do. And from there, then pick a color. Today, I think I'm going to pick red as the color for me. And you can get that wet and get some color on your brush. And then just dip it onto the water on your paper. For me, it's starting to make splotches. And he said as those splotches move about your paper, just start to then begin to move the brush as it feels right to you. So you'd start to make some waves, some signs. Today, my feeling is long curves. And then at the end, maybe perhaps make a symbol of something that means something to you today. And for me, in the midst of this red on the paper, what comes to mind is a heart. The love that can be found in the love of Christ. That every time we get our fingers wet or our brushes wet or our paper wet, we remember those living waters that we return to. I pray that this activity may bring a sense of peace and calm for you in the midst of this Lent, and another way to be able to pray and to spend time with God in a way that uses our whole body and creativity in doing so. May these living waters and God's peace and love be with you this week.
Deep